Today is day 60. Nancy Guthrie, 84-year-old mother of Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie, has been missing for more than 8 weeks now. This is a moment that investigators had hoped they would never reach, this milestone. And still no Nancy. There's been ransom notes. There has also been investigators pulling more information and evidence from her house just a few days ago. Savannah dropping new information in her recent interview with Today. We'll talk about it. But the big question right now, could she still be alive? Could she be in Arizona? Well, I have a special guest to talk about it, a private investigator who's going to join me on the show here. But first, do me a favor. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and be sure to share this with a friend. Let's bring the true crime family back together right here on True Crime and Justice with Matt Johnson. Now the case of missing Nancy Guthrie. Joining me here to discuss very special guest and a friend of the True Crime family, we have Jason Jensen, private investigator and co-founder of the Missing Coalition. First off, thank you for being here. What are your thoughts as we enter day 60 of this investigation? Could she still be alive?
Thanks, Matt, for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, this case is very perplexing, as you probably feel. It's been 60 days, and even though we've had video evidence of a perpetrator, and she's an 84-year-old victim, and her daughter is a famous celebrity, we don't have really any answers. There's not really any real solid direction in one theory or another. So it's smart to have all the theories in motion as they narrow down the possibilities of what truly happened to her. And I think really what's going to be key is the digital forensics, for instance, for cell phone and things of that nature that likely the FBI has been brought in on.
Yeah, and when we're looking at this, though, in your experience of tracking people and investigations like this that you may have been involved in, is there a possibility that she could still be alive?
Well, it's interesting. When these first happen, there's clearly a high expectation that they're alive. If the theory is it's potentially a ransom, a kidnapping opportunity where you're just waiting for a message to come along, something in the mail like old school days, or digitally through an email or text, that there would be a ransom. And the further you go, though, the greater the likelihood is that they're no longer with us. If it was a kidnapping, something went wrong, because we know from history as examples where there were kidnappings, where there were ransoms at play, things have gone wrong. The Lindbergh baby, for instance, even though there was a ransom paid out, the baby was dead and wasn't returned safely. In the case of Adolf Coors, one of the CEO of the Coors beer company in Denver, when he was abducted in the 60s, a ransom was in play, and he was found dead. He was shot in the back, probably trying to escape his abductor well before the ransom went into play. So we know if you're scrappy, if you're a fighter, your victim may try to resist. We know from Nancy's front stoop, there's blood droplets on the porch. So maybe she tried to resist and got in a fatal confrontation with them, and she ended up dead as a result. So if it was intended to be a kidnapping, it could have went wrong.
Yeah, and when we're looking at the case evidence, such as the blood droplets on the front porch, I mean, this is a video from Fox Digital. But when we're thinking about that, Savannah Guthrie dropped some big evidence a couple days ago where she did that interview on Today, and she was talking about how her mom was taken in the middle of the night how she had no shoes, but also the bombshell was that the back door was propped open. Now, why would that be the case if her blood's in the front and she was brought through the front door?
And that's very observant. And one of the things that we do when we do crime scene reconstruction is that we go through and figure out where the crime occurred and each process that took place in the commission of the crime and the order and the sequence of things. So one of the things that somebody likely did as they went through the home is they tried to figure out or theorize what happened. Why do we have blood at the front stoop? We had a perpetrator enter the front of the house, but then we know that the camera was removed. We know that the back door was propped open. So the questions that I have, for instance, is there wasn't really any attempt to clarify that statement from Savannah. Is that I would want to know, is it typical for Nancy to prop her door open, given the fact that it's January in Arizona, where it exceeds 117 degrees in the summer. In the winter time, though, it's very, very mild. I mean, you're talking 70s during the day. So would she have left the door propped open to let the breeze come through, and that was left that way throughout the whole day? So I would want to know from her family members is, would she leave the door propped open normally, or if that's aberrant, if that's nothing that she would have normally done, then it may have been propped open for the furtherance of the crime, where, for instance, like if she was rendered unconscious or dying as a result of a blow to the head or something, the cause for the blood on the front stoop, did they have to carry her, or was she evacuated out the back door and they propped it to get her out and didn't bother to go back and shut the door? Why would they, right? So they wanted to escape, and they took Nancy with her, alive or dead or dying. We don't know. But if they left the door open, and I say they generally, because we don't know who it is, if it's one person or more, or a group, but we do know that there was one person seen at the front door. And we wonder if it was an organization, if this was an intended kidnapping. We do know that there's been cases in the South, in Arizona, California, where there are these organizations that do these B&Es, break and enterings, to steal stuff. But what we do know in this particular case is there really wasn't anything missing that would be evidence of this being a burglary or a theft. Her purse was left behind. So you wonder if Nancy herself was the target.
Yeah, I think that you're bringing up really good points here. And let's actually listen to part of that interview, and I want to get your reaction to it.
My sister called me and I said, "Is everything okay?" Mm-hmm. And she said, "No." She said, "Mom's missing." And I said, "What? Yeah. What are you talking about?" She said, "She's gone." And she was in a panic. I was in a panic. I'm like, "Call 911. Yeah. She's like, "I did. We've called them. They're here." And we thought that she must have had like some kind of medical episode in the night, and that somehow, the paramedics had come because the back doors were propped open, and that didn't make any sense. We thought maybe they came and there was a stretcher and they took her out the back, but her phone was there and her purse was there and all her things.
All right, I want to pause it right there because, again, she's talking about that totally bizarre situation of the door being propped open in the back, but we see the blood in the front. So was that to misdirect investigators, or was that the original plan? What do you think?
Well, just to be clear, since I haven't done a walkthrough of the residence, I can't really make a more of a reliable assessment, but just theorize with me is that we know that there was a camera at the front of the house when he entered, and it was removed, and there was no video footage gained from the Google Nest servers of them leaving through the front. So it leads me to believe that after there was an entrance, and they were in the house for like 45 minutes. Something happened inside. Maybe there was Nancy was awoke from her bed, or she heard a noise and confronted them in the living room, or something like that. And I would be looking for blood stains, droplets, spatter, anything of that nature inside the house to identify where there may have been a confrontation. And then with the droplets being in the front but no video, I would think that there was either an attempt to remove her through the front of the house and she resisted, so there was an assault there, if that's the origin of the confrontation, a physical assault. And then she ran back into the house and they followed her through. Or maybe they thought to go through the front door and thought that it was too public, because there's cars that travel in front of the house. So that maybe they thought it would be wise to evacuate her through the back of the house to be more concealed in their efforts.
Yeah, these are all really good points, and I don't think that a lot of people have thought about it in that way. And again, that video from Fox Digital, that clip from the Today Show interview that Savannah Guthrie gave a couple days ago. So do you think that she could still be in Arizona?
Well, there is that possibility. If she was abducted, you would think that she'd be in some kind of, safe house where they're waiting for a response to a ransom. But as we're in day 60, I think the probability of her being alive, because she was a fragile victim, Savannah said she was unlikely to be able to even walk up to the front mailbox without a lot of pain. She was 84 years old and in failing health. Eventually, your mobility becomes less and less. So if she was constrained by physical limitations, and they had to be rough with her and they manhandled her, she could have fell and had a fatal blow. If she's dead, given the fact that we're talking Tucson, typically when somebody is a victim of a crime and you're deceased, they dump your body in the desert. Or if the safe house was across the border, which, being Tucson, the Mexican border is only an hour away, so they may have removed her to Mexico to a house that's under the care and protection of the cartel network, where you're not going to have ease of law enforcement to execute a warrant. So that's even a possibility, that she was just removed from the U.S., from Arizona, just because Tucson is an hour from the border.
Well, that's very grim thinking about it that way, but it's the reality. And Savannah even mentioned that they just need some sort of answers for whatever closure can bring from that, a proper funeral, etc. How do you track Nancy right now? What are investigators doing to track her?
Well, I think what is really going to be central in understanding what happened to her is kind of twofold. We live in a digital age now where you're either interacting with your future perpetrator in real time today, and you're unaware that in the future there's going to be some crime that you're a victim of. So there may be emails exchanged with somebody that was threatening her, or maybe she had a home health nurse that person broke up with their boyfriend, and that guy had a pie in the sky idea about kidnapping Nancy because there was idle conversation. It's going to be somebody that knew her, that was in her circle, that they interacted with, or maybe even somebody that did not like Savannah Guthrie's politics. Or I've seen where news anchors or journalists become a target, or their family members become a target because they've said something that was disparaging about their family member, either in covering a story or something. So they want to exact revenge. So maybe this was indirectly intended to get after Savannah because she said something about one of their family members. So this is retaliation against Savannah's family member. I've seen this play out that way. So I would be investigating those connections. I would also be employing from the FBI's Rocky Mountain Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory and have them do cell phone analysis for that particular day, analyzing any cellular activity or any vehicular activity that connected with cell phone towers and was leaving that area of Tucson where she lived in a manner that looks like someone fleeing from the area, especially if it was a number that was not frequently to register with those towers. So I would eliminate neighbors, unless of course you're focusing on a neighbor, that there was some kind of bitter dispute with your neighbor over property line or something. I've seen those kind of stories play out as well. But for instance, as far as the forensics go on cellular, we know that there's a strong cellular network with all the different carriers in the Tucson area. In fact, T-Mobile itself has built 29 new towers recently and upgraded over 95 existing towers. So we know we have a vast network where there can be some triangulation and figure out who was new to the area and who shouldn't be in there. Especially now with AI, crime-solving software, you can plug in phone numbers and look for things out of character with as far as things entering a network or leaving a network or within a vicinity. And we know from past experiences where cellular made a difference and identified a perpetrator in a disappearance or even a murder.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, because not only are we waiting for DNA to come back from inside the home that was collected, it was a mixture. So we're going to have to do a lot of digging in terms of forensic genealogy, right? So that may take a minute. But that led us to Golden State Killer. That led us to the arrest of Rex Heuermann. That led us to the arrest of Brian Koberger. So there's hope. But then, there is also hope in the sense that there is going to be more images that may be recovered from the backyard. And we'll learn more about the door being propped open. But I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence is what no one is talking about. And you talked about it, Jason. You talked about it, my friend, which is this lady's cell phone. The victim's cell phone was left behind. We heard Savannah talk about it. And I think that if there was some sort of exchange or stalking and interaction, it's in the phone.
Exactly.
So how do they extract that? What does that look like?
Well, usually they just take it down to the laboratory and they just do a data extraction. And in so doing, they can even recover deleted data, like if you deleted text messages or things of that nature. So, and nowadays people tie their emails to their phone. They got their phone log. They got the registry for everything that their cell phone connects to towers or any phone call communications, any text, SMS back and forth, social media ties. So I would imagine, given the fact that Nancy was, of the state of this age where she had, a celebrity daughter, I'm sure they had all those communications, ways to communicate. I know that Nancy's been featured in some of Savannah's stories over the years, and that may have led to her being targeted in this manner because somebody learned that Savannah's mother lived in Tucson, and they've had her in her home be interviewed for the Today Show and stuff. So it might have been a viewer that had a crazy idea about how they're going to make some money, and things went terribly wrong because one of the things that we know from analyzing the behavior of the perpetrator on the front stoop is he did not act very professional as like a career kidnapper or a professional in the sense that he was like an assassin or somebody trained at this. It was very amateurish to first not be aware of the doorbell camera and then haphazardly try and cover it up with either holding up a handful of flowers in front of it, and then even though he was using his palm to block the camera view, he would still move it away to eyeball the camera, which gives him a direct facial exposure to the camera. Anyone that would have been an expert at this, even though he's got a bite flashlight and some gear to do this night operation, he should have went in there and neutralized the camera before he even looked at it. He could have reached up and just hit it with a rock or a hammer, but what we're seeing here is he's playing around with the camera with a handful of weeds is very, juvenile, if not at least just amateurish. It's like, what are you hoping to do?
I mean, even if this person has not committed crimes before, they crossed a line. They have crossed a big line, and will this person strike again? Are they now, into the realm where someone else could be kidnapped?
Exactly. Because as long as he's at large, he's free to do this again. And one thing we know about these violent criminals, people that's either, sex crimes or abductions, this is like a on-the-job training. They get more and more experience. They realize what they did wrong the last time, and they hope to overcome it the next time.
You brought up sex crimes. Do you think she could have been sexual assaulted?
It's probably not very likely. I mean, given the fact that she's 84, and even though the perpetrator has masked himself due to his gait and his stride, and even what we do see exposed from the mask, he doesn't seem to be older than in his 30s, 40s tops, because it doesn't seem to be a likely targeting an 84-year-old for a sex crime. Usually if it's that way, they go into the home, they assault the woman, they kill the woman, and they rob her. They don't try to abduct her.
What are you waiting for in this investigation? What are you watching for?
I'm literally watching for a release about the digital forensics. I think that's really going to be key. Either communications that Nancy had, or maybe some threatening messages or stalker type that was shared between Savannah and somebody in the past. It can be up to years ago. Something triggered this person that maybe had some animosity towards Savannah over a story, a couple years ago, or maybe they were in prison and got released. We don't know. I would be exploring all those possibilities. Who would have wanted to do you harm, or who has made threats against your mother? Things of that nature would all be important questions I'd want answered in leading to somebody that's likely a target. Or if we get a phone number from those conversations and we see that number popped up in the network in the Tucson area, well, that would be a big red flag.
Let's just both hope that she is found soon.
Let's all pray for that. And we really do hope that she's found alive and safe, but gosh, it just, sometimes the realities of the probabilities have to, and for instance, we do know that the Pima County Sheriff's Office recently announced that they were suspending cadaver dog searches, which means, given the fact that they're cadaver dogs, they're believing that she's deceased. So there you have it.
Jason Jensen, thank you. We hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Matt. Anytime, bud.
Again, today is day 60 in the search for missing Nancy Guthrie. Anyone with any information being asked to call police or the FBI, there's $1 million plus cash reward. The number right there on your screen, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Let's keep the Guthrie family in our thoughts and prayers. Take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.